Welcome to the Nuclear Power Institute's The Path of Most Persistent podcast. The podcast highlighting individual stories of persistence, community outreach, and inspiration to support the continuing and emerging nuclear science and technology needs across the state of Texas. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope you enjoy today's podcast.
Good afternoon. Today we have with us Stephanie Rodgers. She is an emergency response supervisor for the South Texas Project in Wadsworth, Texas. We're thrilled to have Stephanie. Stephanie has been a longtime friend of the Nuclear Power Institute, at least as long as I've been with the Nuclear Power Institute. I've known Stephanie in many capacities, but again, today we're so honored to have her as part of our discussion. And with that, we want to just welcome you, Stephanie. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Very exciting to have you. And as I always like, we always like to be very transparent with our audience. And as I mentioned, you've been a friend of NPI for a very long time. And we live in the same community, Palacios, just 12 miles away from the South Texas Project?
About.
Yeah.
Close.
And although you're much younger than I am, we live in the same community. We went to the same school. And so I like our audience to know that. But beyond that, getting to know you as a professional and as just the amazing woman that you are, it wasn't until I started working for the Nuclear Power Institute over a decade ago, and we became aware, at least I became more aware of you through our relationship. So to kick things off, if you could, can you just tell us a little bit about what it is you do as an emergency response supervisor at the South Texas Project?
So, I've been an emergency response supervisor at the South Texas Project for about, I would say, almost 4 years now. And a lot of people get that confused, I guess, because they hear the word emergency and they think it's medical. And this department is not, it's more of managing the emergency plan. So managing the parts of like running a drill with our STP employees and local, county, state, and federal partners, and just making sure we practice and that we're aligned.
So love it. Thank you so much for that. And you said you've been in this position for about 5 years?
Yeah, I would say as a supervisor for I think 3 or 4 years, total number of years at STP, going on 21 years at the South Texas Project. Yes, I started very young. I started off in the IT department over there for about, I would say, 14 years. And then these last 7 years, I've been in the emergency response department.
Okay. And that's really impressive that your career, basically your entire professional career has been at the South Texas Project. And was that always your goal to, once graduating from high school or in college, to go on and work at the South Texas Project?
It actually was not. I mean, growing up, I was aware, of the nuclear plant down the road, but, and you probably remember growing up in a small town, you want to get out, right? You want to get out of the small town. And so I always thought, I'm going to move to a big city, Houston, Dallas, Austin. I'm not going to come back home. And
famous last words.
Do what? I'm sorry?
Famous last words for so many of us.
Correct. Famous last words. And yeah, I did not think I would come back to Palacios and work at the plant and my whole, like you said, my professional career there. But I am so glad that, that was my path, that I didn't stay in a big town and I came home to Palacios, where my parents are, where my family is, so very thankful, very glad that I came back.
Now, speaking on the small town, I guess, background that you have, I'm from a small town too, and that was prevalent on the, I got to get out of here real quick as soon as I can. Can you speak on that a little bit more about, to those students who have those thoughts, or individuals who have those thoughts on what that might mean on coming back and helping your community, and what that means to you?
Yeah, so definitely, I did leave. I did leave Flashes for, I would say, couple 3 years or so. And then, job opportunities came up with the South Texas Project, so that's what brought me back. And coming back, yeah, it's just coming back to your small town. I mean, there's opportunities to help, being part of the programs, the mentoring programs here, and just things like some of my daughter's teachers were my teachers. Being able to help at the school, help around the community, things like that. It's just so gratifying, because things that when you're growing up, you're aware of them, but maybe as an adult, it's different, right? It's a different perspective. And you don't realize how many people or organizations do need your help in town. And so definitely a different perspective. And then working at the power plant, we have the opportunity to help. Like we recently had several community days where we went out to the local communities, and we did things like repairs on buildings, or paint the buildings, just whatever the community centers needed, like the library, things like that, women's center, crisis center. It's just so gratifying to be able to give back to your community.
So I noticed in your resume that you started off with an associate's degree. And I think a lot of times people undervalue the importance and the need for people to go to junior colleges and to get those associate's degrees. So can you please talk to that?
Yes. So when I graduated from Flashes High School many years ago, I mean, just the funds that my family had at the time, junior college was all that, we could afford. So that was one reason why I went to junior college, but also because I knew that I wanted that step, because in my mind, I wanted to get that associate's degree so that I could have something and work while I was going to pursue my bachelor's and then my master's. So in my brain, they were stepping stones. And so I knew I wanted to do that. So, and also as a fallback, in case something happened, I'd have that associate's degree. And then if something happened, I'd have the bachelor's degree. So yes, very important. And also these days, things have changed. Universities are expensive, and that is a way to go. But you could do a dual enrollment too, maybe something like that. Junior college and then move on to university.
Thank you for speaking to that. And Gianna, that was such a great question, because, as you're aware, Stephanie, we partner with universities and all of the surrounding junior colleges. And that's part of hopefully our communication and our mission to our educators and student partners, that there's such value in those degrees as well. Maybe not just as a starting point, but also as an entry point to get into a professional career as you did. But listen, I'm going to just I'm going to have to spend a little time and just give you a little attention and love and admiration for a moment. Okay. All right. So everybody just hold on for a minute. So the reason I thought you would be such a wonderful guest to have on our show is for so many different reasons. Not only because, again, of your professional reputation and what you do, and the value that you brought to NPI in every capacity, which I want to talk about, because you were one of our founding mentors to our students in our very first program so many years ago. So I do want to talk about that. But, because this is our podcast about, perseverance, the path of most persistence, I, want to hear about any story that you would like to share because we do have a wide audience. And I think you being such an outstanding individual that anything that you share with our audience is going to be well received. But if you don't mind, I'm going to just touch on a couple of topics that I know about you, and you can share whatever story you'd like about any topic. But I have such admiration, again, because not only the person that you are today, but the richness of your background. So from my understanding, you're first generation, correct? Your parents immigrated here.
Yes.
Okay. Number two, you're a woman in the nuclear industry, which underrepresented automatically. So I love that. Also, you are very culturally diverse. And here in Palacios, we are so fortunate because we have a very culturally diverse community for being just a community of 5,000, give or take 500 people, depending on the day. But we're so fortunate in that respect. So I'd love for you to talk about that as well. And also, too, understanding that your father is a municipal judge, right? And so that's never easy to have a parent that when you live in a small community, of course, everybody feels like they know you and they know and they want to tell all the things you may or may not have done when you're young. But especially when your father or parent is in a position of high authority, if you want to talk about that as well, because again, your family is so well respected as well. But you just bring such a complex story that anything you talk on would be so welcome. So please talk about some of those obstacles and how you've persisted over the years, professionally, personally, academically. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So yes, my parents came over from Vietnam, I would say 1974, 75, around that time frame, with not much, right? They left their country, did not have much with them, came to this country, barely speaking the language. And I mean, they're definitely if you want to say perseverance, that's them right there, right? Coming over here with nothing, and then they started off with businesses, and worked as waitress, truck driver, and then opened their own little Asian grocery stores. My dad, he always told us, always said, you need to get your education. Always emphasized that. And so I remember being in junior high, I think, maybe early high school. He was taking his classes at night, carpooling, right, with other members from Palacios. Um, and he would ask me to actually help him with his papers because his grammar, right? His grammar was difficult for him. But yeah, they just are just really great role models, and it seems like they never stop working. I mean, they're retired now, but they're still working. But yeah, they've been through a lot, and they always wanted us to, go to college and have a better life and have the American dream, right? So yeah, then they helped me get into college, and after that, I got a job offer for STP, and STP helped with some tuition assistance for my master's. So that was very helpful. When I was in IT, there was a networking course that I was going for, and you had to take a certain number of tests and pass each test before you finally got your certificate. And, I took the test. It was in Houston. Took the test, failed it by like one question. So I got my results. I'm sitting in the parking garage, just crying, bawling, okay, because I failed this test. One question, and then also the test cost money. So I was also crying because here I was out some money too. And just, just the feeling of, oh my gosh, just disappointment in myself and all that. But, gathered myself together, went home. You got to keep going. You've got to keep going, got to keep trying. Um, it was an expensive lesson learned, right? So you just study harder. So and you pass, and eventually I did get my certificate. But that I don't know, maybe just that part of sitting in the parking garage and just crying, just really, I will remember that. But at that time it was a negative, but now I see it as an obstacle that I learned from, and that kept me going. It kept me down for a little bit, but I just kept going. The other thing, the other experience that I remember is before I got pregnant with my daughter, I had started my master's degree, right? So did have to take a semester off when she was born. And then how the credits worked, I needed to start up again, or else I would lose all the credits that I had already accumulated. And so I'd wake up early on the weekends and kind of, sneak to our third bedroom and lock the door and try to be real quiet and study and, all that. And I'd hear her like walking around the house, like, Mama, Mama, like looking for me, sometimes crying. Now, of course, her dad was there. My husband was there, but she wasn't by herself. But, it was just like heartbreaking that, she was looking for me, like she knew it was the weekend, but where am I? And, but it was heartbreaking. But you have to, it's just some sacrifices that you had to make at that time. And then afterwards, I got to spend time with her after I graduated. So anyway, just those are the things, some of the stories I remember. The other thing was my 20 plus years at STP. There were times that I applied for other jobs, some leadership roles, and I didn't get them. It's not like I applied for every job and I got every single job that I applied for. No, not at all. But what I learned is you get to practice your interview skills, right? Get to practice your interview skills. And then two, I would learn, I learned to, well, you know what, I could take this course. If there was any course that was available, I would try to take it, because later on that helped me in, the other jobs that I applied for. So any leadership courses, there was like a procedure writing course. So any other courses that STP was offering, or any courses just outside, all of that helps on your resume to help you later on. So definitely don't discount that.
That is really,
Go ahead.
oh goodness, I'm sorry. That is, thank you so much for sharing that. And that's a lot. I mean, you've done a lot. And I think so many of us, so many of the audience will appreciate having to shut that door and hear your little one out there, clinging. I remember the times where my own kids, they would stick their little fingers underneath the door, like, like they know you're in there. If they could just get that door open, So I get it. But the good news is, I would always tell myself, at least they're looking for me, right? I mean, otherwise, just because I'm out of sight doesn't mean I'm out of their mind. And I love that. So that's good news. And I know your daughter, and I think she is so happy and appreciative of the woman, the mother you are. So good job, you.
Thank you.
Good choices. So with that, Stephanie, I want to talk about going back to when NPI and STP first became, I guess, partners, when we first started some of our partnerships. Can you tell me, do you remember those early days? Anything about those early days?
I do. I remember, of course, we partnered with Women in Nuclear. And I think we started, the Power Set program was in Palacios, right? That was the
Yes.
start of it before you branched out to other schools.
Yes.
And I can tell you that I loved being a mentor to these young ladies, and I've kept up with them over the years. And it's just wonderful. These ladies, they're of course they're driven, they're motivated, but some of them maybe did not have a professional type role model. So I think a lot of the ladies enjoyed it whenever they got to tour STP, kind of like tour like an office environment, professional environment. And I can tell you that, the ladies in school, the girls in school, I mean, Power Set was like the pinnacle for them. If you got into Power Set, that was because the standards were high. And so they held themselves to a higher standard. And yes, they were, I know from them personally that they were very proud to be in that. And I know the ladies in the Women in Nuclear from STP, we really enjoyed mentoring them as well.
Well, and it was an exceptional time because we had so much support from every level, and especially with all of the women in nuclear. And if I remember, there were a few men too in the organization, which was nice. But going back to that and really speaking about mentorship and how much the students themselves appreciated you women so much. I know that it's not always easy to be a mentor, right? Because it takes a lot of your own time, your talent, and sometimes even your treasure because you were buying things, you were buying lunches for them as well. So why did you continue doing that for so long? And also not just with Power Set and mentoring in that capacity, but it seems as though, Stephanie, that I can't really think of a time you ever missed an event, but you always volunteered for the SOS events and so many other events that NPI hosted. So, what kept you going? Why did you continue?
Well, the thing that keeps me going or keeps me going is of course just my internal perseverance, my internal motivation. The fact that growing up in this community, I wish back then in the 90s that we had something like that. And unfortunately we didn't. I mean, we had some, we had student council and honor society. We had a school counselor and whatnot, but we didn't have an organization like that where we could mentor, the young ladies at the school. We could help them. And so, and I, growing up, I'm the oldest, so I didn't have like an older sister or older brother or anything. Thankfully, I had some friends that were a little bit older, so they kind of helped me through the whole high school process. But I just feel like I didn't have that the adult mentorship when I was younger. So that's one of the reasons why I kept going, and I didn't want to miss any events, and I didn't mind like giving up my Fridays because at the plant we work Monday through Thursday. We do 410s, and so if my work day was too busy, it's a Friday. I'm right here in town. I don't mind going to bringing them a pizza, having lunch with them, checking in, seeing how their week was going, how their year was going. And the other thing is, like you mentioned, my daughter. I mean, she is my everything. And, I want to be a good person. I want to show her, I mean, show her what it is. I mean, how she can do whatever she wants, how she should persevere. You know, I just want to show her. And that's that's pretty much my why.
Well, that's a great and wonderful why. And again, we were always so appreciative of that in your time and you sharing. But I think too that you every interaction that I became aware of or I witnessed myself, you just weren't there. I mean, you were really putting things into that. You were really putting quality into that. And again, that's a lot. So thank you for that partnership that's always continued. I think what you brought up about, growing up, you didn't have this opportunity. And I'm so appreciative that you brought that up because I think NPI, when we try to create programs and opportunities, events for our students, we always think of the coulda, shoulda, wouldas, right? What could we have done? What should we have done? What would we have liked back when maybe we were the age of our targets? And we try, and I think we've been successful with that. But that also goes to say that our partners, like such as yourself, because we can't do this ourselves, right? Even if we come up with the best ideas, the
Right.
best popcorn, as we sometimes like to say at NPI, those best ideas, we can't do it without you. So for you and all your colleagues and everybody that's ever helped us, thank you, because if it were not for you, we couldn't do all the things. So we really appreciate you and everything you do. But I always remember to at the Science on Saturday events when you and Wendy would go because you
Yes.
guys are partners a lot.
Yes.
There was such enthusiasm, and I love that seeing you guys because, like I said, y'all just weren't there. Y'all were there, and y'all were engaged. But I want to make sure before we end our conversations that we don't uh, miss the opportunity to talk about some of the opportunities that maybe you and your daughter. I don't know if you want to mention her name or not, so I'm going to let you mention her name. I don't know if she wants to be mentioned or not. Some opportunities that maybe you guys had because of the opportunities or the partnership with NPI. So, do you want to talk about some of those opportunities that you and she have had?
Yes. So I think it was okay. So pandemic, all my years are all running together. But in 2019, I believe, summer of 2019, um, through NPI and through another agency, my daughter Caitlin and I had the opportunity to travel to Japan and participate in the Fukushima mentoring workshop. And
That was hosted by the Nuclear Energy Agency.
yes,
Yes. And they just contacted us because they knew we had the best organization. So that was our only connection. Okay. So shout out our reputation. Okay, go ahead.
No, thank you for the clarification. All these acronyms and agencies.
Absolutely.
Yes. NEA. And so I was asked to chaperone Caitlin and three other young ladies, one from Flashes and then two from Bowling High School. And so we got to go to Japan and the workshop was for I think junior high and high school students over there, and then of course our young ladies came over and got to speak as well, and then I had a small speaking role as well, and we over here, how should I say, it's even more difficult, I would say, in Japan as a female wanting to go into a STEM field, right?
It's culturally significantly different.
Yes, very different. There are cultural responsibilities and whatnot. And so, so the workshop had guest speakers, various guest speakers from Japan that were successful in STEM fields. And then, of course, the young ladies over here that spoke, and the feedback that we got from the attendees was amazing. You know, they realized that, you know what, I can have a family, I can have a career, I can do both. And so just very impactful workshop. I mean, very impactful. Just amazing, amazing.
I think it's tremendous that students from very small communities, Ash's Bowling, you know, were able to travel to another country, because sometimes I think so many of our students, it doesn't matter if they're from a small community such as ours or a larger community, because now we have our programs in really large communities too. But I think sometimes at that high school, that tender age of, you know, adolescents, teenagers, it's such a vulnerable time for them. And I think they sometimes feel so removed from what matters or how they matter in life or into the bigger picture of things. And having the opportunities as some of those girls, and maybe even you yourself, that it does matter what we do in our very small ways. It matters what we do because everything adds, right? Every act, every word, every activity that we participate in builds in something larger and greater. And if you do things very well and with a little bit of luck and a few connections, you get noticed and you're able to really network. And I was so happy for our young women that went, because they were able to network with not only with people outside, of course, in Texas, outside of Texas, through maybe even other states and beyond the Texas agencies, but federal agencies, and then international ones. And I hope those young women realize the opportunity that they had, and that what they do and their abilities are everything. Their only limits are what they choose their limits to be, at least with a little support. So thank you for saying yes to that. And when you were asked to be a chaperone, that couldn't have been easy, because you were caring for students outside of your own. But thank you for that. And it's all about saying yes. And you've always been a great partner, as I mentioned before, with NPI, but you've always said yes. And that means so much to so many. Steph.
Thank you. It was an amazing opportunity. Amazing.
One question I had is, so you mentioned that you had kept contact with a lot of the students that you previously mentored through our programs. I was wondering if you had any awesome success stories from any of them that you'd like to share.
Yes. So two of them are A&M grads. So that's, yep. One is, yeah, two of them are A&M grads. One is in the military. Let's see. Yeah, those are the ones that I can think of real quick.
That's awesome. I'm sure that you had such a profound impact on helping them determine their path after high school, that so we really appreciate that as well. And I was wondering, you place so much importance on the mentorship role and everything, and you've mentored so many students. If you had any advice that you'd give any students, maybe who are facing obstacles or challenges, or maybe don't have mentors, or maybe some advice from your perspective for those students.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I know it's cliche, but you just have to keep trying. Like I said, you just have to keep studying until you pass that test, or interviewing, practicing your interview skills, and interviewing until you get that job. And then trying to find a mentor is important. you know, there's so many people, I think, that would be flattered if you ask them, hey, what do you think about this? Just getting their feedback. And it just doesn't have to be, you don't have to have just one mentor, your entire professional career or your life. I mean, throughout your life, I think different people come into your life and, bring different perspectives. And so, for myself, I've had different mentors, professional or just friends that were that gave me good, solid advice through different stages of my life. So definitely, you never know when just even a casual conversation with someone can spark an idea or spark a different perspective or different, you're working on a problem. Maybe they say something and it sparks a different approach to the problem. Yeah, so you just never know when that mentor can be.
I absolutely agree that I can't place the importance or how much of an importance that mentors have had on my career and my path through college and what I've done thereafter. But so thank you for saying that, and hopefully our listeners can take that and apply it to their lives as well. But I think we're nearing the end of our time with you, and to be respectful of your time, Dr. Segovia or Gianna, do you have any other pressing questions that you want to end on?
So my last question is, how did you find mentors? How did it feel? Because when you first started, you've been there, what, 21 years, you said, at STP?
Mhm.
And so I'm assuming you're probably one of the only females. So how has that changed? And how did you persevere through that sort of environment?
So yeah, it's definitely not, the ratio is more male than female in the nuclear industry, but it has changed. I have to admit, in the past 21 years, now you see more females in the industry. And as far as finding a mentor, I definitely look to people that were in leadership type roles um, in my department or other departments. As I stated before, it just depends on the different stage in my career that the person that I would talk to, right? And so, just the different, I guess, like whichever department, and it kind of helped with, they kind of knew your situation. So that was very helpful. Trying to find a mentor in my career that kind of, so that they understand what you're going through.
Nice. So I have one closing question, and then Travis will wrap it up for us. But okay, Stephanie, so let's say you're going up to your office,
Mhm.
all right? So you're getting in the elevator at STP, going up, and in steps this young woman, and you strike up a casual conversation, and she happens to mention that she's on her way up for her very first day at work. She's starting, and you guys start talking. You tell her how many years you've been out at STP, and she turns to you and says, what advice? Can you give me a little advice? I'm a little nervous. Don't know anybody here. Can you give me some advice? What would you say to her?
Oh, that's a good one. I would say definitely, so be aware of your audience, right? I know that sometimes some people, and only because I've seen it, sometimes young people just kind of maybe are more open and just saying things without looking at who their audience is. So be careful with that. Social media, be careful with that too. You know, even though you don't think you are still a representative of your workplace. So even though it's your personal social media page, you know, be careful what you put on there. Know your audience, and definitely those are the big things that I've seen with a younger people coming into the workplace. And I would tell her, hey, if you have any other questions you want to chat, you know, here's my cell phone, and give me a call.
Nice. That's really great. I think all that's very, very helpful. Thank you very much.
Well, I wanted to thank you again, Stephanie, for your time today, and really appreciate all the words of advice and encouragement and your experience that you shared with us today with your background and your thoughts on perseverance and persistence. So thank you again for joining us today. So
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. The Nuclear Power Institute is a joint center with Texas A&M University and the Texas A&M Engineering Experiment Station, and is a component of the Nuclear Engineering and Science Center. For more information about our center or about our guest speaker today, please visit our website at npi.tamu.edu and look for us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Thank you.